Welcome to the Right Hand Roadmap, the podcast for seconds in command of founder-led companies. I'm your host, Megan Long, owner of Second First. In each episode, we show you the path to success on your journey as the number 2 leader in entrepreneurial companies. I am so happy you are here. Welcome to the very first quarterly Q&A. Each quarter, we'll be doing a question and answer episode answering listener-submitted questions. You have a few options to submit a question for our next episode like this. You can visit secondfirst.com/podcast to find the submission box. You can also email your question to podcast@secondfirst.com, or if you receive our weekly newsletter, you can reply to that email with your question as well. If your question is chosen for a podcast Q&A, it'll be read anonymously. If your question is not chosen, we will still reply privately with our advice or suggested resources. And you all know the drill. We have to make legal happy, so I do have to give a disclaimer that this episode is for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered legal or professional advice, and we're not responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that arise from the use of this podcast, and the views expressed in this episode may not be those of the host or management. All right, let's dig in. I'm excited. First question. We're a fully remote company. We gave up our office during the pandemic. We're a small business, 12 employees. Engagement and ESAT are high, but our CEO rarely engages with the team now. I'm good at communicating his messaging to the company, but I'm nowhere near as inspiring. I'm worried his lack of presence is affecting our culture, but it's definitely affecting me as his COO. Advice on discussing this with him. Right off the bat, I think that you would benefit from a same-page meeting. This comes from the book Rocket Fuel by Gino Wickman and Mark Winters. It's an EOS book, like part of the EOS ecosystem. Basically, a same-page meeting is a 2 to 4 hour offsite meeting with your CEO. And I would use that time to get really clear on your roles in the business. You can present it as, now that we've been fully remote for a few years, I want to get really clear on our roles and how involved you want to be in the day-to-day. That's a very neutral way of opening up the conversation, and you can have them start. So what's their vision and how involved do they want to be? If they say, well, I want to be really involved, then you can say, great, I've noticed you've been disconnected recently, so let's figure out a way to plug you back in. Or if he says, I really don't want to be part of the day-to-day, I just want to set the general strategy and then go off and focus on other things, great, then you can figure out how you two stay in contact and aligned. I think the most important part, and what a lot of our one-on-one clients struggle with also, is bringing up concerns like this in a neutral way that doesn't put anyone on the defense. So when you're approaching it in a way where you're seeking to understand, this is going to get nerdy for a second, you don't set off that fight or flight. So if your entrepreneur feels criticized by how you're approaching this conversation, their amygdala in their brain might take over. And that's the fight or flight part of the brain. It shuts down the prefrontal cortex. So the prefrontal cortex is your learning brain. It's the part that pays attention. It's the part that understands. And if that's locked up because they do enter fight or flight, they're not going to be able to really allow the conversation to progress in a productive way. So this is all great for survival, but not great for having a critical conversation like this. So your approach really does matter. Second question. I'm second in command over a 5-person leadership team. They're all older and more experienced than I am by 15 to 20 years, and I struggle to hold them accountable or tell them when they're not performing or delivering. I'm worried they won't take me seriously because of my age. So this is a self-limiting belief. The more you tell yourself that, the more you tell yourself, well, they're more experienced. Who am I to manage people that could be my aunt or uncle? The more you shrink in front of others, and the more that they pick up on the vibe that you're not authoritative or confident. I was always the youngest one at the table as an executive, and something that I wish that I had understood earlier in my career is that age is not synonymous with experience. I'm going to say that again. Age is not synonymous with experience. Just because someone has more years on this earth does not mean that they have dealt with the same things that you have. It doesn't mean that they have the same capacity or understanding of things that you do. Look at the entire Forbes 30 under 30 list. You have to start telling yourself that you are worthy and capable. Okay, so this might be bad advice, but this is a hack that I used super early on when I would meet with these multi-millionaire clients as a CPA. Even in the short term, you tell yourself, I'm acting. I'm an actor and I am acting a part right now. It takes away the vulnerability because you know it's not really you. You're acting. You're basically cosplaying business, right? So eventually it'll build into a habit and be your real identity. And that experience in quote unquote acting builds up your confidence. So take that with a grain of salt. But if you really are like a super young executive, that might help you start to build that executive presence. All right, question number 3. Hi, Megan. I'm an integrator of a DTC brand. And I looked this up just to confirm it is direct to consumer. We had some turnover, and now I'm being asked to return to my business development roots in the interim while we backfill some of the sales team. I'm concerned about dropping balls in ops if I'm out trying to generate new business and brand partnerships. How should I approach this with my visionary, knowing that new business is the most important thing right now? So first, I just want to give you kudos where it's due because in small businesses, it's frequently asked for people to step into roles or pick up work that's not in their job descriptions. I know it's a big pet peeve of both CEOs and COOs to hear that's not my job. So I want to commend you for understanding that and stepping back into sales when you know it's what's best for the business and what's best for the team right now, even if it's not what gives you the most energy. That's a difficult thing to do, so I don't want to just gloss over that. You say that ops may suffer if you take your eye off the ball. So operations can mean anything and everything. So first, I would get very specific on what work will not get done, what you just won't have the capacity to do, and what specific effect that will have on the business, both in importance and impact. For those that are unfamiliar, just because our second-in-command community is about 60-40 of companies that run on EOS and those that don't. So visionary and integrator are EOS terms. So EOS runs on something called an accountability chart versus an org chart. So it's set up by your actual roles versus just a title. As the integrator, unless you're sitting in other seats on the accountability chart as well, there's no reason why you should be doing all of this ops work yourself. So I would honestly take a really hard look on what work isn't being done by your team, why it can't be automated, or just at the minimum, have SOPs created so it can easily be handed off. I know that these questions are anonymous, but please shoot us an email or a DM on social media because we do have some tools or recommendations or books that might be helpful to get started in this if you're kind of having that aha moment that you might need to tighten up processes before you move into sales. One example is, we've used the tool Tango. You can click through a process and it automatically documents an SOP with screenshots. That would be a super easy way just to get some things documented and handed off to a team member. All right. And the last question for the quarter. Ever since I was promoted to senior leadership, my personal care, sleep, time with my kids, exercising has completely fallen off the rails. How do you maintain both a personal and professional routine? Okay, so for those of you who do not know, I am a retired pro athlete. I was a bodybuilder for 10 years. I was an IFBB pro, and I just retired in August of 2023. People often assume that because of that rigidity that I had in my life, that I don't understand this very human struggle to maintain self-care while working for others. And frankly, as a second in command, it's a lot harder because your schedule is pretty much dictated by your entrepreneur or by your CEO. So something that I love is Randi Zuckerberg has a pick three rule. So she says that between work, family, friends, sleep, and fitness, each day you can only pick three. So once I accepted this, it was like a weight was completely lifted off my shoulders, because even when I was actively competing as a bodybuilder, I felt like I was letting people down because there just wasn't enough time. So I said, okay, I'm choosing fitness, obviously, work, and then either family or sleep. My schedule at the time was I would wake up between 3:30 and 4 a.m. every morning to go train. So I would go to bed at like 8 or 8:30. There were nights though where I could tell that I needed to put some extra time into my relationship. So I would choose family over sleep that day. And I didn't have friends, but I didn't feel guilty about it either because I knew that I could only pick three. Those priorities have obviously shifted after I retired. I'm building Second First as a business. I'm growing friendships with other women that I love. And I'm usually not choosing fitness, if I'm being honest. It's still something that's important to me, but I am just in a different season of life right now. So for you, I would recommend going through the Ideal Week exercise. It was made popular in the book Time Traps, but essentially you take a blank hourly calendar for the week and first identify the top activities you actually spend time on or you have to spend time on. So these are one-on-ones with your team, meetings that are like just non-negotiables. You have to attend them. And then time to work on your rocks or your big quarterly goals. Also identify any revenue producing or value creating activities like, working on new client proposals. When it comes to meetings, list the ones you participate in, but really evaluate whether they're necessary before you add them to your ideal week. The second step is identifying the top activities you want to spend time on. So these can vary from professional or personal. So continuing education, certification training, tackling a big project you haven't had time to start. Or for personal, this is where you fit in exercise, self-care, actually taking a lunch break, and put them on your list to add to your ideal week. And then third is mapping out the template. So I think it's important to create themes for your days as much as possible because activities that require similar energy and focus should be scheduled together. So, for example, all of your one-on-ones should probably be on the same day because they require the same type of energy and mindset. The last thing you want to do is have to drop in and out of projects or stop and start tasks throughout the week because this is what kills productivity and your weeks are just going to continue to feel chaotic. On your ideal week, as you are filling out your hourly template, begin with normal day-to-day life things. So breakfast, getting ready for the day, your commute, exercise, taking a walk. I mean, it's important to be realistic with how much time these activities take, especially if you have kids. So don't set yourself up for failure by packing your schedule or being overly zealous with like, I'm going to go to a Pilates class, I'm going to do all these things. Be realistic. Next, add in the activities that you have to do and that will always be part of your week. So these are your one-on-ones, processing timesheets, doing payroll, things like that. And then third, time block the most important revenue producing activities or value creating activities. So again, this is meeting with prospects, working on rocks. Last, fill in the gaps of what you've identified as things that you want to do. And then the last step is blowing up your current calendar without any guilt. Just tell people that you're restructuring your calendar. Everyone should understand they should adjust to your availability instead of vice versa. You can print out a copy and have it next to you. Or my favorite is I like to create just a new calendar for myself in Outlook that I call my ideal week, and I will overlay it on my real calendar. So if someone's wanting to schedule like a networking lunch with me, I'll pull up my ideal week and I'll see, okay, I have these certain days blocked off for networking lunches. I try and stay as disciplined as possible, and I recommend that you do the same. And when we're talking about themes for the day, for your ideal week exercise, make sure that for each day, choose 3. Choose your 3. So let's say Sunday, you want to sleep in and take a long walk to the park with your kids for outdoor playtime. That's sleep, fitness, and family. Monday, maybe you have a long day of meetings and then have committed to going to a networking happy hour. So that would be work, friends, and sleep. You probably won't see much of your family that day or make it to the gym, and that's totally okay. And then in this hypothetical, Tuesday, that's a shorter work day for you, and you usually have Family Taco Tuesday. So that would be work, family, and then in your ideal week, you can schedule in a 30-minute virtual yoga class after your last meeting, but before you have to start dinner. So that third one that you're choosing is fitness. So as you work on this, because it is going to be something you have to constantly work on, be gentle with yourself and just start realistically and make sure to be flexible without sacrificing discipline. To catch show notes and find links for anything mentioned in this episode, visit secondfirst.com/5. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review on whatever platform you're listening on. Remember, you don't have to navigate being a second in command alone when you have the right-hand roadmap.